Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is a Monday morning, a pretty gray, overcast day. Beautiful day yesterday, which was Sunday. It's about 10:53. Hope everyone's doing good. Had a pretty fun weekend. This past weekend was my birthday, and we got to have some good times and had a couple of gigs. It was a last minute gig on my birthday, so it was a good time. Got some cool movies, and yeah, very excited about today's show. I went last night to the movies with my great friend Eric Patrick. Definitely one of my supreme movie buddies. We've seen a lot of movies together last year, a couple of years. It's been really great. So we went last night to Flagship Cinema in Thomaston, Maine, and we saw this new movie called The Substance, starring Demi Moore. It's a brand new film that just came out. It was directed by Coralie Forget, who is a French director. She directed a movie that I saw, which I want to see again. It came out a few years ago now, called Revenge, and I remember seeing that movie and actually liking it quite a bit. But I have to say, it was probably, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago I saw that movie. This new movie, The Substance, is a her second full length feature. So it's interesting. I've complained a lot about, and I try not to be, I guess, a Debbie Downer about too many things. I'm pretty misanthropic, and I do have that kind of outlook on most things, but I try to be pretty optimistic. I try to be a pretty positive person about most things. But to me, I always have this way of looking at things where there is like some kind of a dark kind of undercurrent. But I try to stay positive. I try to look forward, or try to move forward for the most part, and be pretty. On one hand, I try to be pretty practical, and I try not to, when it comes to films and music, I've said this many times, but I call it the what happens a lot, and I think it's a generational thing. But the thing that the way I like to describe it as is the grandpa syndrome, basically where you have this, kind of old man or old woman perspective, and you're all curmudgeony, and you're complaining on how they just don't make them like they used to, and that can be anything. You can apply that to, like, a new piece of equipment that you buy now that seemingly seems to break down left and right, compared to, like, say, when you bought something very similar maybe 20 years ago. Or, and you hear it all the time when it comes to music, films, and all those kinds of things, of where, there's just not any really, there's not any great bands that really excite you anymore. Or a band that you did like for a while just puts out a bunch of disappointing records, and you just feel like you're not getting that experience. And probably most importantly, or where you hear it the most, or where I hear it the most, is around movies. A lot of people say they just don't think, they don't make them like they used to. They're just kind of recycled ideas over and over again. And so I've always been someone who, for the most part, I love older films. I love music that is also from decades in the past. And I gravitate towards a lot of older music, a lot of older films. I just did a show the other night on a film that which I don't think I've uploaded it yet. Actually, Aaron and I, when we went out to dinner, we were talking about this very same thing, and I was talking to her about a movie that I just saw, this Italian movie that I just bought. What have they done to our daughters? I did a video. I recorded a video for it, and I haven't uploaded it, but it will be. Actually, I have uploaded it, and it's set to premiere pretty soon. But it's an Italian movie, and I was totally blown away by this movie. And I watched it knowing it was an older film, but not knowing what year it came out. And at the end of the film, I was looking at the box, and I was totally beside myself and kind of blown away when I realized that this film had come out in 1972. So that's a thing. And we were talking about that, and getting back to the kind of the grandpa syndrome. Or they don't make them like they used to, blah, blah, blah. And, and I've said, a bunch of times in the past that I've been, in a bunch of videos that I've been, pretty disappointed with a lot of newer films. Again, my favorite decade being the 70s for really all things. But at the same time, that being said, I try to really stay current. I try to look forward and try to be open to new films. I've been really blown away by a lot of new music that's been coming out. And my favorite thing to do in my free time is to go to the movies. And I want that experience to continue. I think it's very important. I think film is the most complex, and I also think it's the greatest form of, from two perspectives. I think it's the greatest form of artistic expression, and I think it's the most from the fan or from the viewer perspective. It's the most immersive. It's everything involving sight and sound. And I think it's the most important art form. I think it's the most complex art form that there is. So I want to see that experience be sustained and just maybe get better, but I don't want to see it go away. Of where it becomes a memory of the distant past. And I attribute that to because the world is such a different place now with things being at the tip of your keypad, where you can stream and hear and listen to virtually anything that you can think of, or that's even out in the cosmos, in a few seconds time, and all done obviously in the comfort of your own home. But I really feel that movie-going experience is I think it's a sacred thing, and I think it's really important for that to be preserved. To me, it's the greatest way to be entertained, and it's the ultimate form of pure, unadulterated escapism. Because I feel like that's what art does. That's what art should do. So anyway, I had heard about this movie, The Substance, just really through these, I don't know, kind of like these slow little rumblings online. I had heard that there was this new movie coming out, and called The Substance, and it had recently been shown at the Cannes Film Festival. And again, this goes back to, I watch a lot of old films. That's my passion. That's my love. I buy a lot of older films. Like my, example of the movie I just watched recently. So I try to really stay, focused on what's coming out and what's current and what people are, to a degree, what people are talking about, and things like that. I do try to keep my finger on that pulse. So I heard about this movie, The Substance, and where I heard that this film had premiered at the Cannes Film Festival really recently, and it won a big award. It won the Best Screenplay Award, which is a pretty prestigious award. And then I slowly I started to hear more things about this film, that it was a newer or modern horror film, and that this movie was really a piece of art, I guess you can call it, that really pushed the envelope. And then I started hearing that this film was, a body horror film, and that it was really a film that you do not want to eat food while you watch it. That was one of the funniest things. I saw a review where that was one of the main things that this, or it was actually Chris Stuckman who brought this up. Who is Chris Stuckman? I do watch his shows quite a bit. He's probably one of the biggest YouTube guys. Um, that's where I first heard about this film. And so, but again, that being said, I was very kind of like, I don't know. At that point, I wasn't really excited. I was curious. Because honestly, I've been really disappointed with a lot of newer films lately. I feel like the age that we live in, and again, it's nothing, on one hand, it's nothing new. But I think, because it's been, sequels, for instance, there, and franchises, it's not necessarily anything new. There are tons of examples of all kinds of franchises that have come out in the 70s and 80s, movies from, the Halloween franchise, the Death Wish franchise, these are all older franchises. The Omen, The Exorcist, I mean, there's countless. So it's not necessarily something new. It's always happened. But I started to feel that now in this day and age, there are there's just so many that are coming out, and where every other week it's either a comic book movie, it's a sequel to some kind of comic book franchise, or a prequel. And then what I've seen in all kinds of other films, mostly with horror, there's been reimagining, modern remakes of certain films. There's been prequels. There's been sequels. Just, I felt like we're in this unprecedented time of where literally every movie that's coming out is some kind of established IP or is tied to some kind of franchise. And it felt like it's been at this kind of overwhelming level, like this constant wave. And it felt like, and it feels like there's nothing new, like fresh and exciting, that is, its own standalone film that will, when you have that reaction, when you first see a movie that is its own thing, its own island, that experience, especially if it's good, obviously, that experience really stays with you. And it's the birth to something new, and it's a whole new experience, and it's fresh, and it's exciting. They're probably throwing some new ideas out there. It felt like for me it was getting that experience was becoming more and more scarce, and I wasn't coming across that with a lot of new films. So I've been really disappointed with a lot of newer films. I don't go to the movies as much, and that's really due to my lack of enthusiasm and my lack of excitement around newer films. One movie that I really loved this year, and getting back to what I said a second ago, it is tied to a franchise, but I think one of the greatest franchises, and that is I saw Maxine, which is the third film in the X franchise, directed by Ty West, starring Mia Goth. Awesome movie, super cool movie. I love that movie. Can't wait to buy it. I can't wait to buy all three movies. That was, pretty much the best movie I saw this year that really stands out, and it was really a great experience. So it's, but that's one movie out of hundreds of films that have come out. And everything else, and even that is an example, that is tied to an IP. That happens to be a really great movie. But literally every other movie I was coming across was just another example of this constant continuum of just sequel, whether it's a sequel, a reimagining, or a prequel, just constant, constant. So I've been really, really sick of it, and I've been really burnt out of the Marvel universe. I did really love Deadpool and Wolverine, but that to me is a different kind of a film experience. But anyway, so I went into this movie pretty cold. I knew it was a horror film. I heard it was very gross, but I didn't know much about it, and it was, and I knew it starred Demi Moore. Demi Moore was an actress who was in, back in the day, she was in so many, popular movies, and I grew up like watching her and really appreciating her. I was, very, very excited by all the different things that she did at the time. Bigger Hollywood movies, Ghost, G.I. Jane, but then she was also in um, Tales from the Crypt. She did a lot of different kinds of roles in different kinds of films, and I really, really, I liked her as an actress. So I was really surprised that she was involved in this film because she was, someone who I had, quite frankly, had not seen in a very, very long time. So I was very curious as to what this was going to be about. The cast for the Substance is something else. Stars Demi Moore, of course, Margaret Qualley, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. And the only way I can describe this movie, it's one of the most, it's kind of one of the most insane movies I have seen in recent time. The the other thing was I did eventually, after I heard about this movie, I watched part of a trailer for it, and the trailer is really good because when we actually sat down to watch the movie, the trailer does not have any reveals. At least the one that I saw. I think I watched a little bit of the first trailers. There's probably a few trailers out there now, but I didn't. There were no plot reveals, which happens in so many trailers of basically where it's like a synopsis of the entire movie. A lot of the times you don't even have to see the movie because everything is laid out in the trailer. From what I saw of this trailer, it just piqued my curiosity, and nothing was really revealed. You knew it was going to be pretty dark. It was going to be, pretty visually very intense. A lot of, real intense themes were going to be explored, but that was it. I didn't really know much about this film. I didn't know really anything about this film. And so the trailer was great. And so this movie, nothing was revealed in the movie. And I was blown away by this movie, quite honestly. The second and third act were just completely gonzo crazy. Um, Definitely has a big David Cronenberg influence. There is extreme uh, extreme gore in this film. And the thing that I was just so blown away by was it felt like it didn't feel like there was any CGI in this film. It felt like everything was practical, all the effects, because there are There are so many practical effects in this film, or so many effects sequences that were just mind blowing, and it felt like it was all real. And I'm a practical effects guy, and I was blown away by how much at least how it seemed to, present itself, and especially around those sequences where everything had a tangibility to it. It was all practical, and I was blown away by this film. The ending. By the time the third act came along, I was just like, I could not believe how gonzo this movie is. And I just love that I was so surprised. And I honestly feel like this movie has like a vibe. I don't know, definitely a Cronenberg vibe to it. Um, it has it has this full on like 70s gore, gore fest kind of aesthetic to it. I mean, it's completely over the top. It's very sexual. It explores a lot of heavy, dark themes, a lot of contemporary themes with like gender identity, misogyny. Dennis Quaid plays one of the most vile, but realistic characters I have seen. He's just incredible, and Demi Moore is just incredible. Um, the way the film is shot is the cinematography, the film, the score is just unbelievable. I would say that this is like a cross between like Stuart Gordon, who was a really amazing director, who most famously directed Reanimator, and definitely has a Cronenberg kind of vibe. Super gory, super over the top, very much a horror film. But at the same time, this film is incredibly funny. It had a lot of comedic moments to it. As dark as this film is, and to a degree as bleak as this film is, it's super funny. And I've also, I'd also say that it has like a David Lynch vibe to it too. It's very surrealistic. It's like a fever dream. Again, the cast for this movie is kind of extraordinary. I haven't had an experience like this in the theater in a very very long time. Uh, it truly felt like I was on a roller coaster. And again, the cast, the writing, I can see why this film won best screenplay at the Cannes Film Festival. When we were watching it, I remember turning to Aaron and saying, when things were just going completely fucking batshit crazy, I said to her, I'm like, I can't imagine, like, I can't believe this movie kind of got through the cracks, and to be someone, or imagine the festival, at Cannes watching this film is just like, mind blows my mind, like seeing this film in a, like basically an arena with like 15,000 people. But the cast, Demi Moore, I mean, she's just incredible in this movie, and an actress I had never heard of about before, who plays a younger version of Demi Moore, uh, Margaret Qualley, is she's a fucking rock star. And I feel like the roles that they play, the areas that their characters explode, I mean, or that their characters explore, are it's really talk about taking a risk, throwing yourself in the deep end of the pool. Holy shit! And again, like I said, as dark as this movie is, and to a degree, it's funny because when I was watching this movie, it's really really bleak and really to a degree, it's kind of unrelenting. Maybe about 25 minutes. This movie is pretty long. It's about 2 hours. It's over 2 hours. 2 hours and 10 or 15 minutes, I think. So it's a pretty lengthy movie. I didn't think it dragged. It was a little long, but I was in it to win it, so I didn't really mind that it was long. Um, which is another thing we've talked a lot about. Aaron and I were talking about that. Generally, movies these days, newer films, are maybe a little bit too long, but it didn't. This is an example of where it didn't really bother me. I was into it. I thought, well, maybe they could edit it a little bit of time, cut it, chopped it a little bit, but then I was like, you know what? I was into this movie. I was by that point I was invested in it, and I was excited, and I was just blown away by where the story was going. The ending, the beginning of the film, visually, the music is so strong in this film that it acts like a another character. But the kind of the risk taking, the pushing the envelope that this film did. But it was interesting. About 25 minutes into the movie, and again, this movie's very dark, very bleak, and really, it comes at you almost. It's firing on all cylinders, pretty much right away. I kind of felt after 25 minutes of it, I was like, wow, is this movie gonna be coming at you or delivered this way for the whole duration? And I was wondering, I was really liking and loving what I was seeing, but I kind of thought, will this be too much at this level for 2 hours? Like, the tone, will it be just overwhelming where it could take me out of the movie? I started to feel like, could that happen? I wasn't at that point, but I started thinking, okay, is this going to be like this? Is this delivery going to be the delivery of this film? Is it going to remain at this level for the whole duration? And it's funny, right when I started to feel that way, or kind of had that question in my head as I was watching the film, suddenly the whole tone of the movie changed, and I found myself kind of laughing my ass off because there were these series of kind of comedic moments that happened where I was totally not expecting to start laughing. And there were moments in this film where it really, the tone of it shifted. And that just increased my appreciation for this movie. And I got into it more and more. And suddenly there was a little bit of levity. It wasn't all so stark. It suddenly the tone shift because it was kind of like a black comedy, even though it was very serious. And but I felt it gave the film, like, to digest what was going on and to kind of absorb the impact of what you were seeing. It really added a level of levity to where there was a kind of a dynamic to the film. And I really appreciated that. Right at that moment when you kind of felt like it was needed, you kind of got that. And it was a little bit of breathing space, if you will. But that just increased my appreciation for this film. Another film I would say, or director, that this movie kind of reminds me of, like I said, I mentioned, I was definitely David Cronenberg, the body horror kind of thing, and Stuart Gordon. Films like Reanimator or From Beyond. Very intense, very heavy use on practical effects, and also body horror. David Lynch, definitely what I would say was an influence for her on this film. The very intense, like, fever dream kind of aesthetic, the surrealistic kind of nature of the film had like this. It also had like a well, it's a French, by a French director, but it has a very much a foreign kind of art house vibe to it. there's a lot of things here. There's a lot of different styles. There's a lot of different influences in this movie. Um, the other thing that I took from it was that it reminded me at times of one of my favorite David Lynch films, The Elephant Man. It had that kind of vibe, which I was not in a million years expecting to kind of see or to kind of feel. Um, Lots of different things, but with all of those influences, I have to say that this movie was its own thing. It was not ripping any of those artists off in like the wrong way. They were definitely influences, but this movie I feel like had totally had its own personality. Um, Requiem for a Dream was another movie this movie reminded me of, directed by Darren Aronofsky. Definitely had that kind of vibe, a Darren Aronofsky vibe to it, or influence. But that being said, this film also had a '70s vibe to it, but it had a unique thing because it was, and an incredible science fiction film as well, and it had this interesting thing of the timeline or period piece idea around. It felt like it was taking place in the '70s, but then it had this very futuristic vibe, and then it felt very very modern at the same time. So it was kind of like hard to pin that down, which I liked. And again, with all of these influences that I said that this, or all the elements that it feels, and the black comedy aspect of which I totally did not expect. But that being said, all of those influences and things, references that I just made as to what I feel helped shape this movie. At the end of the day, I feel like this movie was completely unique in its own thing. It wasn't ripping anything off in a negative way. I felt like Carolee Forget really created something new and fresh. That's the thing I was so astounded by with this movie, is that how this was just a fresh journey. It was all these new ideas. It explored all these new ideas in such an original way, and it was unpredictable. And uh, this movie is a big giant stew, an amalgamation of so many different things, so many different ingredients, and it really made this uh, experience very unique and kind of extraordinary. And I kind of feel like this was the best movie I've seen this year for 2024. Just totally fucking wild, totally wild. Especially the ending sequence is just like unbelievable. It's kind of jaw dropping. Yeah, and again, this is a movie without a doubt to see in the theater, like easily. Um, it is, it's a fucking ride and a half. I can't recommend this movie enough. It's probably the best movie I've seen this year of 2024. The Substance, amazing film. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.